Hey guys, in today's video, we're going to learn how to build a to-do application using Next.js version 14 with the new app router. Basically, we're going to learn how we can implement to-do application with React, with tailwind CSS, with Framer.js to add some animations. Yeah, without further ado, let's just see what we're going to build. And then you see it has some animations as it goes into the screen. That's using Framer. And we're going to learn all of this also using ChatGPT, how we can implement new technologies using ChatGPT, even technologies that we were not aware of. How can we use these new technologies in our workflow? And then we can see the to-dos. We can delete a to-do and we can mark it as completed, delete, delete. Yeah, so that's what we're going to build. Hello guys, in today's video we're going to learn how to use ChatGPT in our coding, how to implement ChatGPT when we're making our apps. Yeah, the thing is ChatGPT is here to stay. I don't think it's going anywhere, and we might as well, instead of shying away from it, we might as well as developers learn how to use it, learn how to incorporate it in our workflow. Yeah, so that's what I'm going to do today. I'm going to show you how that process gets done. And we're going to be building a basic to-do application using Next.js, using tailwind CSS, and then we're going to be using a new technology that I've never used called Framer.js. So why am I using Framer? Just to show you the power of ChatGPT, in that as much as I know React, as much as I know tailwind CSS, I've used these tools for the last 7-8 years. As much as I know these tools, with ChatGPT we have the power to be able to incorporate new technologies in our toolbox essentially. So yeah, let's get right into it. So first thing, I want to create a Next.js app. Okay, so it's giving us the instructions. We first need to install Node.js on our machine. It gives you the link, so just go to that link and then you install Node.js on your machine. Once you have Node.js on your machine, you need to open your terminal and then you need to run this command. So open your terminal, cd into the appropriate directory, then install it. Would you like to use TypeScript? Yeah, for this one it's very basic, so I would say no. ESLint, I would say no also. We would like to use tailwind and we would not like to use the source. Yes. App router, yes. No. And then perfect. Yeah, so here it's just telling us to use TypeScript, but I think that's more for advanced users. But for now, I just want to keep it super basic. So when it finishes, we need to cd into the project. Then we need to open it from any code editor of our choice. Yeah, so for me, it's still installing. Once it finishes installing, so I have VS Code right here. I'm going to drag the folder into VS Code, and then I'm going to open the Next.js application. Yeah, so let's just give it some time to load. Here it's just explaining how everything works. Yeah, so that's why sometimes you don't need to follow what ChatGPT is saying like word for word. That's why you need to come into this knowing at least some basics, because I can already tell we don't want to use pages directory, we want to use the new app router. So it's telling us about the pages, so we'll just say I want to use Next.js with the new app router. Can you perfect. So now it's open, and then what I just need to do, take my app, drag it into VS Code, and then here npm run dev. So that opens on localhost 3000. So in here I open localhost 3000, and then it's going to initialize the Next.js app, and then you can see the Next.js app has been initialized. So here it's telling us about, so let's just see what it looks like. Okay, create a basic understanding the app directory structure. So in the new app router, the app directory replaces the pages. So if you're coming from old Next.js, we had pages before, but now everything is just under this app directory. And anything that you call page.js from within a certain folder, that becomes a route. So let's just go and show you that. So if I come in here and then I say about, in the about I say page.js, right? So I create that page, and then so let's just, before we do anything else, let's just do a bit of cleanup in here, delete everything. So I have this template, it's called, so if you go in your VS Code and then you go to extensions, there's this thing called ES7 plus React Redux native snippets. Just install that. It allows me to be able to, so when I create a new file, I can do rfce, press enter, then I have these components. So we'll call this home page. This we'll call it the about page, right? So we have the home, we have the about page, and then yeah, as you can see, home. So you see this these lines, they're coming from this global.css. So yeah, let me just remove those. So those are the base styles that come by default. We remove that. Perfect. So as you can see, page, this is the main page, the home page, and then we have a folder called about. Inside that folder we have a file called page.js. So if we come here and then we say about, it goes to the about route. So that's what it's basically just explaining in here as how these routes work. So it's app, about, then page.js. So yeah, basically that's just a basic overview of how that works. And then so what we want to do, right, basically we want to see how can we use ChatGPT to be able to learn how to create it, to code in Next.js, be able to, so even if you know, like, you know, some of the advantages that I'm seeing, right? Even if you know, let's say you're a seasoned developer, you know Next.js, you know all these technologies, but there are certain technologies that you don't know. Like someone just says, I want a website, in 3D, I want a 3D website, or I want a website with some animations. You might not know the animation library, but you know how to use React, you know how to use some of these tools. So you can use ChatGPT and it can help you to be able to pick up some of these new technologies. So yeah, let's go ahead and say, so I want one page app, to do app. Starting with an input, a button, then a table below that shows the added items. Yeah, so maybe not table, you can just say a div below that shows the added items in the form of cards, right? And then yeah, so we want to show them in the form of cards. And then what we want to do, so I want one page, yeah, before I want, we say using React tailwind css. Yeah, for now I want it to only be able to add. So we want to go through this step by step. Yeah, I find it's best to go through things step by step when you're using ChatGPT. So yeah, along the way it doesn't get overwhelmed, you don't get confused. Yeah, you just want to do things step by step. Yeah, and that's why I said you need to come in. So this is not really like 100% beginner. You need to come in knowing basics of React, basics of Next.js. Because if you don't know basics, then you don't know that we've already done these steps. So these steps, they are all done. We already have Tailwind. We already have all of this. So we're like at this point we're here. But if you're just coming into this and you're not knowing anything, you won't know, and you do this all over again. So just take note. If you've done the above steps, then we're starting from this point, right? Yeah, then let's just copy that and we come in here and we paste it, right? And then it says fail to compile. You are importing a component that needs use state. It only works in a client component, but none of its parents are marked with use client, so they are server components by default. So we need to take this use client. Yeah, it's a thing that Next.js does. Whenever you're importing use state in React, you need to specify that it's a client component, or else it will not work. So now it works, and as you can see, we have our to-do app. So I can say hello world add, and that adds it. So yeah, let's go over what's happening, how it's able to do that. Okay, so in here we have a state called to do, right? It's used it's a string basically. Then we have an object called set to do's, right? And then in here we have a h1 called to do app, and this is basically tailwind css. We're just saying that we want the text to be extra large, we want the font to be bold. So basically this is this to do app, right? And then yeah, in here we have a div. This div has an input box, and this input box is asking us to enter a to do, right? Enter a to do. So this is this input box that you're seeing here. And then so we're saying that the value of this to do is the to do object that we have defined here. So yeah, that's what setting that input as that. And on change basically just means anytime that I'm doing this or typing into the input, I want that value to be set to this to do, right? So once that's done, so if I say clean my house, right, that clean my house is now in this to do, right? And then when I say add to do, so this button is saying add to do, and when I click it, it's running this handle add to do function. What does that function do? We come here, so that function is saying if the to do dot trim is not equal to string. So this is checking if it's not empty. So this is a JavaScript sort of like method that just belongs to every string. It's called dot trim. It's just checking is this thing not empty, right? So we don't want to add something which is empty. So this is not empty, so it's not going to go through. If it's empty, nothing will happen, right? Or we can come here and we say else, right? Then we alert, please add a to do. So if we remove this clean my house, right, please enter a to do, right, because it's empty. But if it's not empty, right, clean my house, that's not empty, it's going to set it, right? So we click enter, that gets set. How is it getting set? So this is what we call a spread operator. We're just saying whatever is existing in the to-dos, keep it, but take this new to-do and add it, right? So whatever is existing, hello world is existing, right? But we're adding clean my house. So keep whatever is existing, right? Wash the car. Keep hello world, keep clean my house, right? They are in the to-dos, but add the new to-do, right? And once you add the new to-do, set the to-do as empty, right? That's why this then clears. So we click add to-do, this gets cleared and added here. Perfect. So we're now able to add a to-do. Yeah, basically this is what's happening. And it's always good to copy your code, right? And then paste it back to ChatGPT since we've made some changes to it, right? And you tell it what you changed. I've had to add use client to the top of the code, right? Okay. So once we've told it what we've added, now we want to add new things. What does a to-do app basically do, right? So a to-do app is basically going to say step by step. We can say we want to be able to delete a to-do, right? So let's go back and say I want the ability to delete a to-do. Yeah, I would say that's the first thing that we want to do, is to delete a to-do. Right. Wait for it to pump out the code. Yeah, that's done. Copy that. We paste it in. We come back and we have our delete buttons, right? So we click delete. That gets deleted. What's happening, right? We come back. Where is this delete happening? So here we're mapping through the to-dos and we're displaying them. So in here, this is a loop. We're looping through the to-dos and we're displaying them in the form of cards, right? And then for each card, we have a button called delete. That's why you're seeing this button called delete, right? And when something is in an array, right, it has an index. So the index starts from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So each and everything in here has an index. And then when we loop through, we extract that index from that item, right? And what are we going to do? We're going to pass this index into the handle to delete function, and we're going to filter out that thing that has that index. So just basic JavaScript, we can filter things out. We can say, I want to filter, let's say we have an array with fruits. We have apple, banana, oranges. I can say, I don't want any oranges in this array. How do I do that? I filter out by that thing. So I can say array.filter, then I put the orange text. But then in here, we're filtering it out by the index, right? And how do we know the index? We're getting it from here, right? Then we're passing it into this, and then we are filtering it out. So basically, that's how the delete function is working. So there, we're able to delete. Okay, perfect. So now, since we didn't change anything in our code, we go back to it. What's the next thing that we need in a to-do app? Right, so wash my car, right? I need to be able to check this to say I did it. Did you wash your car or did you not, right? Now, I need a way to mark a to-do as completed. And when it's completed, cross it, right? So we want to add things to the to-do app. Once that thing has been completed, we click, and then it checks it, and then it crosses it out to say, oh, that thing has been completed, right? And then we can see it crunching out the code. Let's check if it runs first, then we can go through the code. Copy that. Perfect. Now let's refresh everything. Okay, so wash my car, add, clean the house. Okay, so wash my car, that's been completed, right? And then you can see done, and then undone, done, undone. Perfect, done. So you can see our to-do app has been done. We come here. How is this happening, right? So we can come in here. In our to-do app, we're looping through the to-dos, and then we have another button in here code handle toggle complete, handle delete to do. So we're passing in the index, right? That index that I told you about, where each thing in here, think of it as an ID. Each thing in here is an ID. So we're just saying delete that by ID or complete that by ID, right? But then our to do has had to change, right? So before, our to do was just having a single thing like a text, but now you can see it has the text and then it has this thing called completed. So everything in our to do app now has this thing. So how can I show you that? Let's say console.log to do's, inspect console. You can see it's now an array, right? And then you can see completed text, wash my car, clean the house, right? If I undo this, we can see in here clean the house is no longer completed. It says false, and you can see here it's now unchecked. If I complete it and we open the object again, it's now completed. Basically, that's how it's working. Okay, now the interesting part. So this is basically just React and handling state, right? I would say many people know this. Many people know how to do this. In your day-to-day, you probably know how to do this, right? It's not that complicated, right? But the advantages of where ChatGPT comes in and starts to help you is, I don't know how to use Framer motion, right? But I want some animations. When I edit to do, I want some animation. I want it not just to, like right now when I say, let's just say testing, right? It just appears on the screen. I want some animation to be added into this, right? And improve the styling, right? So those are the kind of things that ChatGPT can help you with. Things that maybe you didn't know, but you need to pick up very quickly. So I can come in here and say, I want to add animations to this using Framer library. So when a new to-do is created, have it bounce to the screen. Okay, let's see if it gives us the steps. So we need to know, how do we install the library? Yeah, it gave us. Let's do that right away. So I like to stop the application, install. Yeah, whilst it's installing, let's see how we do it. Okay, so it's importing something called motion from Framer motion, right? Then let's see, where is it using that motion? Okay, so that div, it appended something called a motion.div. So I would say this is a special div that's coming from motion, and then it takes in some props called initial, animate, then transition, right? And that's wrapped around these cards. So we have motion wrapped around all these cards. Let's see what it does first, and then let's kind of go through it and see how we can understand it. Okay, so let's copy the new code. Refresh. Okay, wash the car, and then you can see how it bounced to the screen. Okay, do the laundry. You see how it bounces to the screen, right? Perfect. Okay, so explanation. Motion.div. We've replaced the standard div that wraps each to-do item, right? So as you can see, this was a div, but it's now a motion.div. Motion.div comes from Framer motion. It has these three props: initial, animate, and transition. So what does initial do? This initial, when the components is added to the DOM, right? So when the item is first added, what do you want it to do? So when the item is first added, we want it to have a scale of 0.5 and an opacity of 0. So you can't see it when it first comes. So test. When it first comes, you can't see it, right? There's nothing, right? Then animate. So animate is when the DOM has been added. We want it to be a scale of 1 and an opacity of 1, right? So you can't see it, then all of a sudden you can see it, right? But then in between that, there needs to be a transition to say how do we go from 0 opacity to 1 opacity. We wanted to have a type of a spring, right? And then, yeah, let's understand how these things mean. So when a new item is added, it will bounce onto the screen due to the transition spring transition effect. So this is this of type spring, right? You want it to bounce. Maybe if you wanted to roll, if you wanted to snap, there are other types of transitions. But I specifically told it that I wanted to bounce onto the screen, right? The bounce is controlled by stiffness, how tight the spring is. So stiffness 200. If we lower that stiffness to 20, maybe it's going to be slower. I don't know. Let's test. Yeah, you see, it's now slow. So yeah, these are things that you're just learning, like off the cuff. Okay, yeah, perfect. Completed, right? Yeah. So yeah, I think basically this is the end, right? You see how we can introduce these new things that we didn't know, these new libraries. Like if you hear someone saying frame a motion library, maybe you become scared. You start to think maybe this is like a huge thing that you need to learn, but we were just able to implement it, in a few steps. So that's the main advantage that I'm seeing with using ChatGPT, right? You're able to pick up these libraries fairly quickly, and you're able to integrate them into your application. That doesn't mean you're now a master at this, but the more you get comfortable with using these new libraries over time, you start to get confident and try to see what more can this library do, right? When I delete that to do, can you suggest right? You start to get more creative. Even going to their documentation and looking up some of the cool things that you can do with Framer, right? As you start to get a hang of it. So let's just see what other thing can we do. Yeah, and this just spices up your to-do app. So it's no longer just a basic to-do application. It now has some animation to it. Okay, delete. Yeah, then you see delete disappears like in a cool way. Yeah,